I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm recording today and pay my respects to their elders past and present. I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands wherever you may be listening from and wherever my guests are joining from too. Sovereignty was never ceded. This was and always will be Aboriginal land. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Jenuine Conversations. So in today's episode, I'm chatting with Via Tendon, a creative leader who started her career in agency land before making the move in-house. She's now heading up Bupa's internal agency and also volunteers as a career mentor with Headspace. Via has extensive experience across brand, content and strategy. She's also passionate about leadership and supporting the next generation of talent. In this episode, we're going to chat about her transition from agency to in-house, how parenting has shaped her approach to work, and her thoughts on achieving the ever-elusive true work-life balance. Thanks so much, Via, for coming on today. It's great to have you.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
So my usual kind of first sort of question for guests on the podcast is just to ask you to give me a quick overview, of your career so far. And I guess, based on the topics that we're going to go through today, particularly focusing on that kind of shift when you went from agency to in-house.
Yeah, so right now I head up Bupa's in-house agency. Prior to that, I did a similar thing of building and leading an in-house team. And then prior to that, which is the majority of the start of the career, was agency. I've worked across small agencies, the one where you work with the founder directly, local agencies, global networks, the one that's part of, the hundreds and thousands of employees. And they're all really interesting. Like, I've worked across all the departments as well, from strategy, media, over to account, a little bit of creative at the very start of my career. Then I realized I really did not like having my creativity constrained. So, and then the last gig was as a suit. So majority of that is just building and leading teams. That's something I'm really passionate about, and I love doing that. The transition to in-house was interesting. I was at agency by that point. I think a little bit of context. I'm a PR kid, and I'm actually a visa kid. I'm not anymore, but I used to be a visa kid for the majority of my career. And so for me, I guess my mentality with work was whoever was going to take me, I was so grateful. It wasn't like I was going to choose and be picky about it. It was, if you would take me on, I'm happy to work my butt off for you. So I was in agency for that long, and one of my bosses at the time, Georgia, she really took a bet on me, and she helped me get my sponsorship and everything. So I stayed for a long time at that point. And also, I wasn't really allowed to leave, if that makes sense, because you have a visa. But that point in my life and in my career, my PR came through. I was newly engaged and I wanted to get married. And one of the clients that I adored asked me to go in-house. So it was kind of like the perfect concoction of things happening. And so I jumped in-house, said yes immediately. And I personally have not looked back ever since. And it has not been, it has been everything that I thought it would be. So yeah, really, really, really grateful for that, and I've had a really fun ride so far.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So in terms of, kind of making that sort of transition, like you mentioned that it was everything that you thought it would be. Could you go into specifics with that? Like, what did you think it was going to be?
What did I think it was going to be? I just thought it was going to be just less hectic. That's kind of what I was looking for, was a little bit more depth and a little bit more time to think about things and not rush into decisions. And to be honest, for me, like, agency, you learn so much. You learn, how to be disciplined. You learn details. You learn, it's really good training for everything that you set up, your career to be. But it also, my nervous system was just shot. You know, in agency, you're at the beck and call of your clients. If a client decides to do something one day, it's gone. Whatever you have is gone, and you then have to have really scary conversations about your team, and it's really rough, I think, for anyone. And it is really thrilling and really exciting and energizing, but it's also really, really hard. And so I guess my expectation of in-house was, hopefully it's just a little bit slower than that, just a little bit. Maybe I can read a document or two, or maybe I don't have to travel so much, and I don't have to be so anxious about, if the next billing is going to come, if next month we're going to hit the mark, or if we're going to make budget and all that. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I expected. Just a little bit slower, just a little bit more calmer. And I was able to read stuff, and in-house is much more slower than I expected, which is great. But also surprising, but great. It's a good surprise.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, no, I can imagine even just sort of, I guess, like the comparison I sort of have is sort of working in recruitment. From what I've heard, working in-house as a recruiter is very different to sort of, being an agency recruiter. And I admit I love the thrill of working under pressure and deadlines and all of that kind of stuff. But I'd imagine your priorities sort of change as, you've been doing that for, years and years and years, particularly as well once, you start to sort of, build up your family as well, which I feel like just based on past conversations we had, that also kind of informed your decision to go in-house. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think like there's always this, now there's this debate or conversation about agency and in-house and all these things. And in all honesty, after doing both, it's such a personal decision, and it really is individual to you as a person. I am the type of person that being a mom and being a wife to me is life. Like that's my life. I love my career and I work really hard, but my kids, and that is what I always wanted to do and what I always wanted to be. And so for me, in order to get that life that I wanted, right, to be the wife that I wanted, to be the mom that I wanted, to be able to raise my kids in a way that I always envisioned and dreamed of, it just didn't match up with the lifestyle that I had with agency. We were flying in and out most weeks. We were on shoot all the time. There are about 20 clients I have to look after. You're constantly thinking about, are we going to make budget? Are we going to be able to sustain the team? Are we going to have to pitch for more work, but we don't have enough people to sort it out? It's just so intense. And I would not be able to do that and also be the mom that I wanted, or be, have the life that I wanted. And so, yeah, for me, it was such a personal decision that when the opportunity came, I immediately jumped at it, because I was perfect. I want to be able to be, to have a life and to build a life that I always wanted. So yeah, it's definitely very personal, and maybe if I didn't want that, I would make very different decisions for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think that we can't sort of, I guess people sort of in the workplace, it's easy to kind of see your colleagues as sort of one-dimensional, where it's cool, this person does this role and that's what their entire life is about. That's not realistic. Maybe it used to be back in the day, I guess. I think I've had similar conversations with other parents where I feel like, my, growing up, it was very much latchkey sort of parents, whereas now there's a lot more focus on actually being around with your kids, which makes a lot of sense. So having that sort of work-life balance is incredibly important, and I can see how that would be just sort of something that's easier to sort of access and, more attainable, sort of working sort of in-house. I guess on that sort of topic, what kind of advice, I guess, would you have from your sort of perspective that, whether it's, sort of an agency owner or even, sort of a head of an in-house sort of team can do in, kind of supporting, parents while they're sort of, working full time, I guess, outside of flexibility within the workplace? That's definitely a number one sort of factor. I think that's really important. Is there anything else that sort of comes to mind for you in terms of supporting parents that are also juggling, having a career as well?
Yeah, I think for me, what's really important is really getting to know your team and understanding that support to each person looks really different. Some working parents come into work as their way, as their identity. Do you know what I mean? Like, they want to come in, really achieve and really drive something forward because that's part of them. Aside from being a mom, a dad, a wife, a husband, whatever the other roles and hats that we play, you come into work and you're just you. And that person versus a person who just wants to go into work, do the best that they can, and log off immediately. It hits 5 because they want to go home to their kids. They're both going to be driven by really different things, right? And I think I love now how we're progressing into a more flexible arrangement. And, it's not for every place and every company. And I hope more companies jump on board. But the blanket rule just doesn't work, at least in my opinion. I'm driven by very different things. I'm motivated by very different things than the next person who's a working mother who might be sitting next to me as well. And our support would look really different. And so it's like understanding what it means for each person. A working parent, a working family might be living in regional, Queensland because it's a better life for them. You have to accommodate that. Like, you don't have to, but I hope you do because they're the best talent for the job and they choose to live remotely and they choose to live in a regional lifestyle versus maybe a working parent who wants to go in every day in the office. Like, it's so different and it's so varied that sometimes I feel a blanket rule for everything, like a mandated return to office or a mandated hybrid or whatever it is, you isolate the needs of different families and different structures. And at the end of the day, we all want to contribute to society. Like, we all want to contribute to a greater good. And I think especially as you become a parent, you have this deep sense of purpose, this otherworldly purpose. There's just, you can harness that, but you have to tailor it to the person. You have to tailor it to how that family works. So yeah, I think it's more than flexibility. It's understanding what is flexibility for that person, what is support for that person, what are their motivators, what are their, energy drainers, why are they here, why are they at work, and kind of using that to get the most out of them, and they can get the best out of you too. So yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing your perspective on that. I feel like that just makes so much sense, and it's just good leadership in general. Anyone can make any assumptions about someone that's, maybe single, or someone in a de facto or, married relationship without children, or someone with children. A one size fits all doesn't work because, not to sound cheesy, but we're all humans and we're all unique sort of snowflakes. So I think the main kind of thing that I sort of get from what you said is just sort of understanding people's why. Once you understand someone's why, that sort of will help you sort of, be able to sort of guide them as a manager and just sort of, making sure that they're sort of getting the best out of what they're doing at work. Like you said, I think there's some people, their identity is their work and what they do for a job. That's a big sense of purpose for them. For some people, it might be more so that, their purpose is being a parent, but then of course you've got to pay the bills. I think it's a reasonable expectation to know that different people are going to have different motivations, but as long as people are kind of, bringing results to the table, doing their job, it doesn't really sort of matter, I guess, what their situation is outside of that. That's why it's good not to have those, preconceived prejudices or making assumptions, which is something, recruiters can be guilty of doing, or just people can do in general, making assumption, what's that saying? Making assumption makes an ass out of you and me. That's one I like to say, so hopefully that's not too cheeky for the podcast, but yeah.
No, I think, and it's so true, right? You look at situations, and I think, we talk about, people discrimination and all that, and I mean, that's a whole other topic. But you just can't assume. With modern medicine as well, modern science, a single person can have a kid on their own. Do you know what I mean? You just can never assume what the situation is for every person. There's adopting. There's adoption, there's fostering. It might not be as common here in Australia, but doesn't mean that it's not true for some families. There are separate households and divorcees and working out 2 homes and 3 homes sometimes. I don't know, like this one blanket rule for everyone is so difficult, because as if we navigate the workplace in the same way. Like we don't, right? It was really different back then from when it was, majority men and majority going to factory, and that was it. Like that was just, it was quite uniformed and homogenized. Whereas now it's so different. You've got moms working, you've got grandparents working, you've got all sorts of types of people in different conditions working, and it's just not possible for a one blanket rule or a one size fits all. I just don't think it works. But I mean, I think a lot of people think that it does work, and I hope they change their minds.
Definitely. Yeah, I think the younger sort of generation, I guess, of people sort of entering the workforce are really going to sort of help shape some influence, influence some change, I guess, in the industry. And sort of, because, if we kind of think about people that were sort of finishing up high school towards the end of COVID, education looked a lot different then. And COVID had definitely a lot of its negatives, but some of its positives in terms of more flexible sort of workspaces and things like that sort of came out of it. I am noticing a bit of a shift with some companies where they're going really, I guess it sort of feels like a bit of a retaliation to that sort of flexibility, and they're going like hardcore, like back in office, mandated, after people have been working remotely. I know just of someone, a friend of mine who works 100% remotely, and it looks like they're going to mandate sort of in office work, and he's got 2 young kids and all that sort of stuff. So I understand things, especially being a recruiter, I'm that sort of middle person. I understand things from like a business perspective and what a business is looking for, or what their ideal is and stuff like that. I think there's a middle ground that can be achieved. I think as long as people are kind of, coming to the table, being sort of open about what their situation is, you don't necessarily need to overshare or go into, exactly what's going on in your personal life, but just saying, this is why I need flexibility, but this is also why I would be incredible at my job, and let me prove it to you. Have things like probationary periods in place if you're sort of hiring someone and you feel a bit iffy about someone being in, completely remote. Have that, that's what probationary periods are for, seeing if that's going to sort of work out. Or having on site to begin with, and then sort of changing that sort of around from there. But like you said, sort of coming back to that sort of why, and understanding people's sort of sense of purpose and what motivates them to come to work every day, and being open to hearing it. I guess maybe as a boss, sometimes you might want to hear, I am so passionate about this company that I work for, and I'll bend over backwards to this job, Yes, that would be a great answer to get, but is that the genuine answer that you're sort of looking for? Probably not. So having those sort of relationships where you can have those sort of open conversations where, you can sort of understand people's motivations and what kind of drives them, because having a family is a big driver. You want to support your family, you want to be an example to your children as well, I'd imagine. So I think it's important to sort of get into some of those in-depth chats. I know I like an in-depth chat myself.
Yeah, and I hope a lot of managers, and this isn't to say, 100% remote, super flexible, don't worry about rules. Of course not, right? At the end of the day, we're still doing a job. Everyone's got a JD they need to fulfill, and you need to perform. And I'm, not about let's break all the rules and let's be loose and, not do everything. But I think there is, definitely a middle ground, but also B, an alignment. If you are aligned with what they're asking of you and vice versa, go for it, right? And understand what the trade-offs are. I'm not one that says, no to mandate return to office completely. It's but what else do you get? What else are the trade-offs for you, right? Work out little things that you can get outside of just going in the office. Are you able to get free parking? Are you able to get subsidized mic key? I don't know, right? Are you able to get extra leave or clock off at 2 on Fridays? Or maybe on school holidays you have a different arrangement. There are so many ways to cut the pie that I feel people are just so focused on just one way of working. There's so many different ways you can do it. And as managers or as leaders, I hope we're just open enough to hear another person out. I think I take an approach that my role currently at Bupa, my role is on rent. It's on loan. I'm here having this title and having this job, and I'm doing the best that I can in my time and in my capacity. But the rent's going to be up. Someone else is going to take the job. And like, and that's just the nature of things. And so, I don't know. Don't feel like you own people and like own the team and whatever. There are set expectations. You just have to work out if you're aligned or not. And when your time's up, hopefully they remember you as a good boss. You go to the next place and you do it again. So it's like, I don't know, being a little bit more detached from hopefully that also pushes you to be more supportive. You know what I mean? If you're not holding on to it so much, you might be a little bit more open to hearing what other people need and supporting that as well. I don't know.
Yeah, I think having that sort of open communication, that sort of openness, I guess, to feedback as a leader, because otherwise sometimes you might be stuck in this kind of loophole where it's like, if you're not sort of looking for that feedback or you're not looking to have those sort of conversations, then it is just kind of your own voice in your head informing what you're doing instead of asking, and building up enough of a genuine sort of connection with the person that you're managing so that they do feel comfortable to sort of be open, within reason, of course. I'm an oversharer. I'm not going to lie about that. But sort of having that sort of, connection where it's still professional, it's still about work, all of that kind of stuff. But where people can sort of share and being open to sort of feedback, or even utilizing, mentors and things like that if you are in a leadership position and you don't feel like you're getting that kind of advice sort of outside of your own kind of funnel and space and everything like that.
Yeah, for sure. I think the faster you ask for feedback, the faster you get it, the faster things get done, and in a better way. So 100%, like I take an experimental approach. Like if you don't know what that person needs, give it a try and ask them, did that work? Like, did that land for you? Is that what you needed in that moment? Can I try something else? Like, I know your cat's sick. Like, what do you need? I don't have a cat. Like, I'd love to understand what that means. Like, do you have to go to the vet? Does the cat need to be hospitalized? Like, just, I don't know. I think we really are so rigid, and I think we're also so scared to be wrong now, Like, we're so scared to make a mistake and maybe say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing that we end up not doing anything. It's like, just try it out. You make mistakes along the way, but you soon figure out what that person needs. And
Yeah, I feel like mistakes are definitely a road to just kind of figuring out, I guess, how you rebuild and recover and learn from it. I know I have a bad perfectionism tendency myself that I'm working on, but sort of growing from mistakes, because if you just sort of get stagnant in not wanting to ever make mistakes, then it's never something you're going to be able to sort of learn and adapt from. If you just sort of focus on being perfect, because then you're not going to sort of take risks and make moves.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know. I make a lot of mistakes. I put my foot in my mouth a lot of the times. I have to apologize a lot of times too. I bulldoze through a lot of things, and my intention is always good. And I think if we focus on repairing and focusing on the next step and getting it right, I think that matters more than being right in the moment, or making sure it's 100% and perfect. And especially with people are complex. You just don't know what they're going through, and you have your own stuff too. So we all have to make mistakes in order to build those relationships, and we shouldn't be scared of it.
Yes, definitely, for sure. And for my last question, I wanted to ask your sort of take or advice that you would give someone at whatever sort of level they're at, or whatever, sort of position that they hold at the moment. Maybe someone that's sort of coming from agency land that does want to sort of move in-house. What kind of advice would you give them?
Oh my. So hang on. So is the scenario definite in terms of they want to move in-house, they've decided, or are they still tossing up between agency and in-house? Like, what's their story?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Let's say it's someone that's kind of tossing up. Maybe they've been offered an agency role and an in-house role, and they've got to make a decision. What kind of advice would you give that person?
Oh, okay, that changes the game. So that's that would be a different advice to someone who's like made up their mind. If you're tossing up and you have two offers, I'm pretty pragmatic. I would actually sit down. Okay, so 2 steps back. I would drop both offers. I won't read them. I'll just sit down for half an hour and write down what actually matters to you. I did that. I still do that at every point of my career when I'm about to make a different decision. Sit down and actually write out in detail, what really matters to you. What is flexibility actually for you? What is work life for you? What do you care about in the workplace? Do you care about a big brand name? Do you care about the size of the company? Do you care about the type of industry that they're in? Like, you really want to get quite nitty and gritty. Go, what salary are you willing to take? Like, literally be so specific in your writing. And I have this framework that I use as well. And sit down and look at that and really understand what levers are there to pull. What trade-offs are you making if one goes with the other? Like, where are you willing to, like, trade off a little to get more of something else? Like, no job is ever going to be perfect, 100%. And so knowing that you have that framework and knowing what you have on that piece of paper is what you actually want, in spite of all the offers that are on the table. And then look at the offers. Look at the offers properly. See if they align with what you have on that paper. And if there is a gap, but let's say you really want to stay in the agency role, but the gap is, I don't know, the pay, or the gap is something, negotiate it. See if you can close that gap to make it the dream job that you want. Or figure out, if you move in-house, what are the trade-offs? And is that trade-off aligned with your framework? I think the toss-up between in-house and agency is like, as if there's a right answer. You know what I mean? There's no right answer and there's no wrong answer. It's just like, is it aligned with what you want, who you are, what really matters to you? Are you going for learning or are you going for earning? Two different things, right? Are you going for a place where you have direct impact? Or like, are you going to a place where you want to get a range of stuff? Like, do you care about range or depth? It's just like different people. So I would really write that down first and then figure out which offer you take and negotiate it to make sure it is the job you want to have and want to do. And also, congratulations on getting 2 offers. Man, the market is tough, so that's a good situation to be in.
Yes, definitely. Thank you for that. I feel like your response just kind of further highlights what we sort of talked about before about humans being unique snowflakes, and understanding people's why and their motivation and things like that. Because if you feel purpose in whatever you're doing, whether it's purpose-led or not, in terms of the work that you're doing, you're going to feel way more motivated to wake up every day and show up and do your best sort of work. And yes, it's always definitely a very good place to be if you've got 2 different offers. So thank you so much for that advice. I feel like that will definitely shed some light for someone if they're in that situation or a similar one as well.
Oh my gosh, if they have 2 offers, I am so rooting for you. Like, and I hope, and I know the market's really tough now, so I know that people are waiting for their offers too, so know that I'm rooting for you. But I think at the end of the day, a job is a job, but a job does a job. Like, as in your life, it fits a certain puzzle in your life, right? Like, it's a piece of a puzzle. It's a really big piece of the puzzle. So you want to make sure it's just aligned with what you want. I think the towing between, is it this or that, is like, I don't know if that's really what we should be focusing on. It's more about, what do you want it to look like? What do you want your day-to-day to look like? Is this aligned with what you want? Some people really care about a big brand name. Some people really care about a boss that's specific, like a specific type of boss. Some people really care about if they get learning and development money in their package. Like, I don't know, but like, there's just so many things that you can make it out to be that I don't think the conversation should be about whether I go here or there. It's like, which one is more aligned to what you want out of it too, and where can you give the most of yourself to, in a way that's fulfilling, because you're gonna do this for 8 hours a day, so it better be really good for you.
Yeah, and I feel like at the end of the day, if you're feeling fulfilled, then you're going to be sort of showing up and doing your best work at the end of the day. So that's super helpful advice to give. Well, thank you so much again, Via, for coming on board and giving your insights and sharing some of your sort of personal story as well. I've really enjoyed chatting with you today.
Oh, I love chatting with you, and yeah, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much. I'll catch you soon.
Okay, bye.